Greetings, the Astro 30 here on the floor yet again in front of a big box. So what is this, I may hear you ask? Well, I've got myself another kit to build, but not exactly an electronics kit. It does sort of involve electronics, but not to a great extent. I don't know if you can read that logo, but it says Pitbull. This is actually from Pitbull Guitars. And what I have in front of me is a 5-string electric bass kit. It's basically all pre-cut. All you got to do is assemble it and provide your own finish. And yeah, you can build yourself a 5-string bass for under $300. So let's open the box and have a look at the contents. Now this is a 22 fret fretboard, so there's 22 frets along there. It's fairly good looking wood. I'm quite pleased with the quality, so I'll put that there. I've got to be careful of that, so I'll put them upside down. So looks like we've got a bunch of parts, including the humbucker pickups that come. This is what it comes with. Okay, with the parts laid out here on the floor, these are the 2 humbucker pickups. This is what they look like. Not very exciting. It's just standard looking pickups with some sticky residue here on the back, but that's fine. So we get 2 of those, and they're magnetic, so they stick together. They supply you with a couple of Allen keys and a really crap looking instrument cord, plug, lead. I believe I've just found the bridge. Yes, I have. Now, I'm confused as to how the bridge actually mounts to the body here. If I can even get it out of the plastic packaging, that'd be nice. That's the backing plate for here. They supply you with a set of 5 strings, obviously, otherwise it wouldn't work too well. But the bridge is what I'm interested in. So I'll just get the bridge out of the packet. And okay. So the bridge would mount somewhere here. Alright, but it's not that flat. And it looks like, I don't know. Yeah, it would mount there somewhere. I can't see anywhere else where you'd mount it. So getting the alignment of this is going to be kind of critical. They have put a little divot drill hole in here for some reason. I think that's for a ground lead to pass up through to the circuitry in here, because there is actually a hole in here. So I believe that's for a ground lead. Okay, so also in this bag, apart from the strings, is the tuning heads or machine heads. And they're fairly standard with a little screw there that you mount to the back of the headstock, and you wind your string around there and turn that. Sorry, I got a bit of reflux. So again, there's no pilot holes on here for the tuning pegs, machine heads, whatever you want to call them. But you just get them as straight as possible like that, and you can drill a hole if you want, and then just mount it. So we got standard looking control knob. We should have 3 of those. One's tone, one's pickup A, and one's the neck pickup. So there's a pickup at the neck and a pickup in the middle. There should be 5 tuning heads. They give us some internal wiring for the pots. So, and over here in this bag we have the pots and a bunch of springs and screws, which I haven't really figured out what there for yet. So this would not be a kit for a first time builder unless you know how a guitar actually works and have, you know, rewired a few in your past. So, and that's just a backing plate for the controls, and that is the input socket, which should mount somewhere on the side of the body over here. Oh yeah, right there. Again, no holes for the actual thing to mount it to, but the body is quite heavy, neck is quite light. So overall I am impressed with the build quality. Well, on their website, yes, they do actually have a wiring diagram for the EX4, RD4, TB4 and JB4 4-string bass. However, it also suits the EX-5, which is what I've got. And the wiring is exactly the same. It's a 2 volume pot, single tone, no switch. So we've got the neck pickup here and the bridge pickup there, and it tells you where to wire the pots and the output socket rather than the input socket. And that's basically all that PDF file is for. I just noticed whilst looking at the neck that there is a slight wound here to the wood. It's a split at the end here on the fretboard. I'd have to carefully just break that open a bit and stick some glue down and clamp it. It looks like it's broken underneath the front surface, but that's kind of a shame. Wasn't expecting to see that, but it is what it is, so I'll have to address that. Could have happened in shipping. I don't think I did it, but that's easy enough to repair. And it's a couple of days later. What I've gone and done is I've glued that little nick in the fretboard there at the end where it was chipped, cracked, split, whatever you want to call it. Stuck some glue down there, some PVA glue, clamped it overnight, and I'm about to take the clamp off now and see how well we went. But first I need to take a shit. I knew having that peri peri burger last night was a mistake. Anyway, take the clamps off. Clamp off, and I'm going to just have a look at this. Well, it looks like it did manage to glue. A little bit of a light sand on the edge there with 120 grit. Yeah, you'll never notice. That's perfectly fine now. Now they say in the quick start guide for all kits is you should really do what is known as a mock fit or mock build to make sure that all the parts actually fit properly. I've basically already done that apart from the pickups. I know there shouldn't be that much of an issue here. The neck fits neatly into the body. And speaking of the neck, I mistakenly said earlier that this was a bracing rod. The thing that you turn here. No, that's actually called the truss rod. And its job is actually to put a bow physically in the neck, usually in that direction, around about the middle, to cure a phenomenon known as fret buzz, which will become apparent when you go to lower the action to a more comfortable playing height. Now, the action is the distance of the string away from the fretboard. So the lower the action means the string is closer to the fretboard. And when you aggressively strike a string, it can really vibrate towards the middle and buzz up against these frets, usually around about, you know, between the 10th and the 14th fret, somewhere around here. And so we would tighten the truss rod to put a little bit of a bow in the neck to cure that problem. And it's only a slight bow, it's not noticeable. You don't really want to go reefing it up and putting a tremendous bow in it because, yeah, you could end up snapping it. Now, so that's one of the first things you do when you set up a guitar is adjust the truss rod, and then you adjust the action and truss rod in conjunction with the action. And with the bridge, I did actually do a bit of investigation, and you are basically going from the inside of the nut, measuring it to the 12th fret, the crown, the very tip, and then from the tip to one of the saddles on the bridge, and that is your distance. So the distance between the 12th fret and the nut should be the same as the distance between the 12th fret and one of the saddles. Not the bridge itself, but one of the saddles in the bridge. And you basically wind out the saddles till all the way out of their adjustment towards the front of the bridge, and then measure there. And yeah, we'll get to that later, but it's not that hard. It'll end up about 4 or 5 millimeters out when it's all said and done and adjusted. That's normal. However, we're going to move on to finishing now, because I'm pretty sure everything fits okay. What we need to do first is very important, is to sand the woodwork. Now, they say in a tutorial on their website, one guy recommends sand some more, sand a bit more, and when you think you've sanded enough, sand it some more. So we want to get rid of all the imperfections from the factory, like where they've clamped it and stuff, any marks, pencil lines, stuff like that, and any rough edges on the grain here, which there are some, I can't feel them now. Right about there is a bit rough. And we go down the grits. So we start with a very aggressive sandpaper. I've got 80 grit there. I've got 40, I think it is. Yeah, 40 grit here, which is very aggressive. So 40, 80, 120 grit. And then finally for the fine stuff, I've got some red 200, 240. So that'll be my finishing sandpaper. I've got 3 sheets of that. And be prepared that it's going to take a considerable amount of time and effort to sand. You could be there for an hour doing it. But it is very important if you want a nice, smooth fit. So anyway, I've been talking for the last 4 minutes and doing nothing, so I'm going to sand this all down and get it nice and smooth, ready for our first coat of that. That's some walnut interior stain. It's actually oil-based stain, so you only need to apply one coat with a brush, and then you wipe off the excess with a rag, and you leave it to dry, and then you put some polyurethane varnish over the top. So I'll be using this good old Cobathane Clear, which is actually polyurethane spray anyway, and this is designed for timber. Now I did some research, and a lot of people suggest oiling the wood using wood oil. Others say polyurethane. It's really up to you, so I'm going to go the polyurethane route. Some of you may disagree, but don't forget, this is my build and it's the way I want to do it. I will state now that I have never built a guitar in my life. I've repaired a few, but I've never actually physically constructed one. So this is the first for me, so I'm a novice when it comes to finishes and stuff. But we've all got to learn somewhere. So anyway, I'm going to sand this up and get ready for the first coat of this stuff. Now I've already done the aggressive one, and I'm down to a 240 now. Ripped that bit badly, but it doesn't matter. Now don't worry too much if the aggressive sandpaper scratches the shit out of the surface. Once you get down in the grits with the sandpaper, it will fix itself up and look okay. So this is just the finishing. There was a defect here where they put a cut and then hadn't finished this corner off properly, so I sanded that back a bit to make it look nice, because, well, that's going to be facing you when you're playing it. And here's a small tip. I've had to go back to 80 grit because I noticed in certain light you could see scratches. Always sand with the grain, not against it, and avoid doing circular motions. You may have seen me do circular motions, which is wrong. So with the grain. Plus, let's face it, I haven't done woodwork for about 20 years, so it's all coming back to me. Okay, they're sanded down and they're hanging via coat hangers, ready for the stain. It's easier to work in the air. Got them suspended with coat hangers. Probably not the best solution, but it's all I've got to work with. I'm going to stain the headstock, and I've got the edges of the headstock masked off to stop it from running over onto other visible surfaces where it's not supposed to be. I've also got the fretboard all masked off around the edges and around the front to protect it from the Cobathane overspray, because you don't want to get the varnish on the fretboard because it will look ugly. So basically I need to get the stain out, a brush and a bit of rag, and then I can do one coat of stain, which is all it needs. Let that dry for about an hour, then apply the first coat of polyurethane. Alright, I'm going to start with the headstock. See how awesome that looks now? Now I'm going to do the same to the body. And there's our result. I think the extra little scratches I put in with the sandpaper actually adds to the effect. But that walnut stain is pretty awesome looking. Quite happy with that. It only needs one coat, as I said. And it's always a good idea to paint inside the cavities for the controls, the pickups and the neck support, because yeah, if you've got a bare piece of wood there, you will see it on the edge, especially around the neck hole anyway. So yeah, I've got to let that dry for about half an hour, and then I can apply the first coat of polyurethane. Yeah, and as much as you try and mask off stuff to stop it getting onto areas you don't want to, ultimately it still will. The edge is not too bad there, you can still see it, but yeah, it like spewed through the hole there. Am I worried? No, it is the back of the neck. It's like, who's going to see it? I mean, yeah, that looks a bit weird, but what can you do? I could sit there and try and sand it off, but it would have soaked into so much of the wood now, it would be impossible to actually get that to come off. Anyhow, that's the finish close-up. It's looking good so far. The polyurethane, which is gloss, will actually make that pop, but probably would have been better with a satin type finish rather than a gloss. Matte would have looked like crap, so I decided to go with gloss because I've got the stuff. I paid 14 bucks for the can, might as well use it. And as I said, it's designed for wood, so the wood's going to actually soak up the polyurethane anyway. Unlike on that metal front panel that I used it on, that ended up becoming a little bit sticky because, well, it's metal. It's not designed for metal. Varnish was never designed for metal. I think the body is darker than the headstock. But then again, it's a different type of wood. I could have probably done 2 coats of stain on that just to bring that darker to that. But yeah, it doesn't particularly matter. I think it's still going to work as it is. So I'm going to let that dry for another 20 minutes and then I'll put my first coat of polyurethane on. Well, the first coat of Cobathane is on there. It's really starting to pop. Unfortunately, the nozzle blocked up and I don't have any thing to clear it with. Don't have any turpentine either. So I borrowed the nozzle off the top of a WD-40 bottle. Probably a bad idea, but it's all I had to work with. It's not directional, it just comes out in a fan spray. Oh well, it still works, except it leaks everywhere out of that nozzle. I should have bought another tin of Cobathane, to be honest. Some of it's on the concrete now. I might put a drop set sheet down after the fact to stop it getting any worse. But now I just got to let that air dry because that wood will soak up the polyurethane and it will still feel rough, so it's going to need at least, I don't know, 3, maybe 4 coats of the stuff. In the meanwhile, I might go out and buy another tin of, another spray can of the polyurethane spray, just so I've got a brand new tin. Means another trip back into Kingston. Fun. I got the shit all over my hands too, so it was all sticky. So I went and put some toilet on my hands. And by that I mean a soap dispenser in the shape of a toilet. Isn't that cute? $5 from the reject shop. Maybe even 3, I can't remember now, but it's a novelty. I don't think they sell that anymore. I got that ages ago. But I think it looks funny. It's just like a hand soap dispenser. That's a toilet. Okay, I got another can of polyurethane spray. Right, I'm ready for the second coat now. What the? Really? There we go. I'm playing swing bass. That may seem like a lot, but it's not. Because remember, this wood's going to soak it up. And I've got a piece of masking tape down in there to stop this stuff getting onto the truss rod as much as possible. Alright, so we let those dry. That's the second coat. The first coat was only to cover it. The second coat is to try and fill in some of the gaps as much as possible. Got a bit of a run here now. Probably because I put a little bit too much on there. But that'll be fine. Right, so this edge is going to take quite a fair bit more coats of the polyurethane than the rest of the body because, well, that's the roughness of the grain there compared to the front and the rear. So it's almost touch dry now anyway. Try and avoid touching it as much as possible. I'm just touching it in conspicuous areas. Yeah, so this is playing the waiting game, unfortunately. This is what we have until we can actually get something that's working. Right, so I've got the two parts sitting above a heater there just to try and help it to harden a bit better. Be careful when doing things like this because not so much the body but the neck can warp, and that's what you don't want to do. And I really love the design of this house with convenient rafters like that to hang things from. Nice. Now I've given the body a third thick slow coat. So there's 3 coats on there and the neck only has 2 on it because it's a different type of wood. It doesn't soak up the polyurethane as much as the ash does. These edges might have to be touched up with some varnish that you paint on with a brush just to get it thick enough. If it proves not to be smooth enough, it feels pretty smooth at the moment. I have put a heat gun on this to help dry the finish as much as possible. But now I'm just going to leave it sitting above the heater for about half an hour just to get the finish to harden a bit better. Then I can think about attaching the neck to the body. Really with the assembly what we should be doing is doing all the electronics first, then attaching the neck, and finally attaching the bridge and getting the scale length correct. But either or, it doesn't really matter if I put the neck on first before the electronics, but yeah, the instructions say you should really do the electronics first. However, I think with the neck, trying to put the neck on with the knob sticking out and the pickup sticking out would make it a lot harder to attach, because at least this way it's all still flat and there's no, you know, tuning pegs on here or machine heads, and nothing for it to prop it up at an angle and not allow you to lay it flat. And I really should think about taking the masking tape off the edge of that. It's a shame about that. A little bit of a overspill and that one there, but not much I can do about it now. It looks a bit funny, but It is on the back, who's going to see it but me? Okay, so basically while I'm waiting for paint to dry, I want to investigate these pickups because there's like 3 wires on here. Now, that looks like a shield, but that looks like a green wire in there as well. So I reckon this is a dual coil pickup, hence why there's 4 wires and a shield. So the green one would be probably common to both. That looks like the 2 hot wires, and that looks like the negative. So to confirm that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a multimeter across those wires, and we'll see whether or not this negative is joined to here. We've got like 12K across those 2 wires. And we've got 6K across those 2 wires. So between there, we've got 6K across those 2. Now, this is where it's going to get a little bit confusing as to where to wire what to where. Yeah, okay, so I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do here. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to join these 2 wires together. Well, the black I would assume would be a negative and the green would also be an earth, so I reckon it'd be those 2 are joined together like that at the earth, and that's joined to the pot. Of course, I could be wrong. However, there is a way I can find out. Okay, I've got the oscilloscope hooked up to the green wire and the 2 hot wires here. If I touch this black wire with my hand out of the way, you can see there's an awful lot of noise there. And there's quite a bit of noise on the scope now. But if I join these 2 together, the noise is a lot less. So that's the tap test, and it's not really proving much, so I'll get a screwdriver. There's a bit of a spike there. So I'll turn the bolts down. Seems to be producing a voltage when I do that. So if I disconnect that shield and just connect it straight to the black wire, so I'm getting noise there too. It's about as responsive, so I believe hooking it up together like this, these being the ground, well, we get a lot less noise on the scope for a start, but it still works like a pickup should. So if I connect that to an amplifier and tap it, we'll be able to hear something. I can hear a lot of buzz coming out of the speaker. But it is. Oops, I just lost my connection. I can hear a thump coming out of the speaker, so I know it's working. However, if I disconnect, turn the amplifier off before I do that, and just connect this black lead, it's a shitload noisier. So if I now connect it just to this green wire shield, the same. So that just goes to prove that those two definitely need to be connected together in order to work, or be not as noisy. If I disconnect the oscilloscope, of course. That sounds a bit better. The oscilloscope was obviously loading down the pickup. No, but that's working fine. Might drop my volume down a bit. Just revalidate that test. Just the hot and the green. Yeah, it's a lot less noisy when that black lead's connected. So yeah, both of those have to be connected together. So I'll just test the second pickup. So that's green and black. And hot. Yep, pickups are working. So I'm just looking at the hardware that I've got here, the screws mainly. Got the pots down here. Now there's two linear 500k and one logarithmic 500k. The two linear ones are for the volume pots, which sounds contradictory to what you're supposed to have, and the logarithmic would be for the tone control. Now there's 4 screws here, which is for the neck and back brace for the neck. There's 4 machine heads, washers and screws in here for the machine heads. There should be 8 screws and 8 springs, which are for the pickups. There's another machine head and washer and screw for the 5th string, and there's 2 strap mount cups plus the screws for that. There's 4 screws over here which I believe are for the backing plate, but there's only 2 holes. Okay, these 6 screws here, now what were they for? The bridge, of course. Those are for the bridge. There should be 6 holes. You've got some pot nuts and washers in here. The capacitor, which is a 683, which is a 0.068 microfarad. You've got the cover plate for the truss rod, plus the 3 screws. And it looks like they even give you a bit of solder too, which is nice. So that's all the parts. Screws accounted for. They do take great care when they pack these kits to make sure that you've got enough hardware. However, there's 4 screws for a backing plate where there's only 2 holes. That's funny. I'm not going to drill any other holes. I'll just have 2 screws over. No big deal. So I'm just waiting for the paint to dry, and I'm also waiting for the battery for the new drill, cordless drill that I bought, to fully charge so I can screw the neck on, because I'm not going to screw the neck on by hand. No way, shape or form am I going to do that. I already have RSI on my right wrist anyway. I don't want to make it any worse. Other things like the machine heads and the pickups I can screw in by hand, but the neck is going to be the toughest thing to screw and get super tight, because you do need to get that neck super tight and super flat. Anyhow, moving on and waiting for that to charge and waiting for the lacquer to go off a little bit more. Now that is still a tiny bit tacky, but it's nearly almost fine to handle. And I thought that this would be sticky to touch with my thumb, but no, it actually feels quite normal, if there is such a word for that. And after a bit of playing, that'll wear off anyway, because your thumb's going to be moving up and down it. But yeah, it feels alright. Just got to wait for it to dry a bit more before I handle it. Alright, I'm about to attach the neck to the body for the final time. I've marked my drill bit for the depth of how long the screw needs to be. So I'm going to drill a 3mm pilot hole first, or pilot holes. And it's a plastic receptacle here with a metal plate here with countersinks on the top, so that would fit in together like so. I guess they're using the plastic as a washer. Now it's always advisable to use a hand drill for this. That was only the drill bit slipping, or the screwdriver bit I should say. It's probably as tight as it's going to get, and now it's not straight. For some reason it's not going, it didn't go straight. That's alright. I'll back the screws off. And I should now be able to get it straight. Probably would have helped if I'd done this first. I'm going to clamp this into position so it's actually holding the neck flat against the body. That may actually prove to help better. And well, we all make mistakes. Yep. Now, the neck and body are one. Now it's starting to look like an instrument. Next on the agenda is to mount the bridge. However, I'm going to need a wire to go up into the cavity there to ground this, and I don't know how successful this is going to ground with paint on it, so it might be an advisable idea to actually scrape a bit of this off with a file or a piece of sandpaper. I just used a file because it was convenient. So now I need to find a wire for that, which would be in my bag of shit. Yeah, it would be that black wire, because they give you a bundle here, which I assume is for pots or whatnot. Plus there's an extra two here, which I reckon is for the output socket rather. So, and it depends if I'm going to use this wire or not. We need to strip the end of this wire. So I pass the wire up through the hole provided. Grab him from the other end. And that can just sit like so. So it's sort of like flat with the angle of the hole. And in order to get the correct, or close to correct, what's the word I'm looking for? Scale length. Is I'm going to wind back the top saddle all the way till the screw is at the bottom of its thread. I'm going to do the same for the lowest one as well, without it doing that on me. So that they be at exactly the same length, which they won't be because these screws are shorter. So I'll have to wind that one back in, but I'll measure it when these are both the same distance from each other. So we've got 25 there, 27 there, so I'll wind him back out. As for the scale length, it's from the inside of the nut to the crown of the 12th fret, and we're looking at 431 millimeters. So for a correct scale length, it's going to have to be from the 12th fret to the edge of the saddle, 431. So I take it from the same point on the 12th fret, right in the middle, and shift this up so the center of that saddle is sitting at 431. Just double check it on the base. That one is out. Either I measured it wrong or something else is wrong. 431 there. Say about 432 there. So that one's not quite in center, but so it's all about measure once, measure twice, measure thrice, and then cut once. So if I make that 431 to there, that's more like 435. So I don't think that that's quite the right distance away. So I might see if I can back this out some more. It's all got to be adjusted when doing the action and stuff anyway. So, but I want to try and get this as close as possible. The bridge is supposed to, according to what I've been told, sit at a slight angle even on a base. But you'll never be able to get it. Not measuring like this anyway. 430 to there. 431 to there, so we're pretty close. So I know I'm in the ballpark. So I know it's going to be about there. I know this is taking a long time, but you've got to do this really, really well, or else you're going to have the wrong intonation. Now we need to make sure that it's horizontally in the right place, and for that I'm just going to take my set square and line it up against each side of the bridge and make sure I've got the same distance between the edge of the neck and the edge of the ruler. And I'm using the pockets in the for the pickups as a guide to how straight I am. So we're looking at about 10 mil there. And it's about the same. It's just that you want to get this pretty close to where it needs to be, or else the strings are going to be off on the body and they're not going to sit right on the neck. They'll hang off over the neck. So as long as I've got that roughly where it needs to be, I can go about, well, drilling it, I guess. So I need the screws for that. So I'm going to need a 1.5mm drill bit for this. So, and because my drill bit is pretty small, I'm going to do a tried and true method here. I'm going to mark with whiteboard marker where I need to drill my holes, and I hope that this is right, because otherwise I'm going to look like a stupid motherfucker. There we go. All holes drilled. Now I'll place my bridge back on over where the holes are. I'm not going to take that all the way down, I'm going to put some other screws in first. And that one's tight. So I can now wind these back into roughly where they were. Alright, so that's the bridge installed. So let's see if my measurements still stayed, which I'm not going to be able to see now. Yeah, 431 roughly from where they were. 431. Yeah. By nature the bridge is supposed to be on a slight angle anyway, so if this end is slightly off from that end, no biggie. Right, moving on to the next bit. So next I'm going to install the pickups. That's passing the wire through the holes provided, obviously, and they've got to sit on springs too, so I need to get a drill in there to just, you know, start it, or not really worry about the drill, I guess. Just put the screws in. Now they have to sit on springs, so that's going to be awfully awkward to get in there, but we'll try. Which is not as easy as it looks, but it can be done. Albeit that one's crooked now, but I have no idea what height to put these at, so I'm going to leave them as they are until I get the strings on. Speaking of the strings, next thing to do would be to put the machine heads on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place each machine head in its hole and put its captive nut, retaining nut, and washer on the outside just to hold them still whilst I'm working. Now these go together like this. Okay, so and make sure to stick the head of the machine head out the top of the neck, not the other way around. It won't fit the other way around anyway. I like the fact that they're black. They're normally just chrome coloured. These ones are black, so it kind of matches the rest of the design. It's probably why I really chose it, because it was black. So now with it facing the other way round, I'm going to use this again to get them straight with each other. And if it would stay there, which it's not going to, because maple is, believe it or not, a very soft material, so all I need to do is just use the screw to make my hole. It might actually help if I did drill a 1mm pilot hole to start with though, so I might do that for the rest of them. Well, they're on, but I overtorqued this one and snapped it. So now, well, because the screw's sticking out the hole a bit, it'll probably still hold it there just fine. Stop it from spinning around. As it is, I'm going to leave it alone. I did think about drilling it out, but I don't think it's really worth the effort. So now I can now tighten these center nuts. If I had a spanner that would fit on there, that would probably be a better choice, because that nut will hold it perfectly fine anyway, but it's only to stop it being dragged backwards and forwards with the string under tension, and it shouldn't. Let me see if I can find a spanner that fits that. It just so happens to be a 15. So that'll make life a lot easier rather than using pliers. A spanner is always a good idea for a nut anyway. Don't have to go over tightening these, just so they're snug. Oh, it wasn't even tight. Okay. Right, that's the machine heads put in. So now I can think about putting some strings on to see what it looks like. Now hopefully everything lines up, because if not, I'm fucked. Right, so far with both the B string and the G string on, lined up with the nut, doesn't look too far off on the bridge there. Looks perfectly fine, it's not sticking off the edge of the neck anywhere, so I'm pretty sure that that should be right. So now all I have to do is cut the end of this string down a bit to make it fit into the machine head a little bit easier, and so I don't have to turn it so much. There is, however, one little issue here. There's no cup thing to actually put on the string here to guide the string at a better angle, because it's sitting now at an angle to the neck. So there isn't one in the kit, and I kind of wish there was, because that's a problem. That's bad. I don't know how I'm going to fix that, but there's got to be a little string holder there somewhere, and there isn't one. So anyway, before I go any further with putting any strings on, I just want to make sure that this truss is done up at least tighter than it was, because it feels about good there. Yeah, well, for a start I got the D and G mixed up. This is actually the D string, so that should be going into there. So I've got to pull it out the bridge and put it in properly into the right space. So yeah, tension that up to G, and you'll know all about it. It'll snap. So anyway, this one's slightly longer than the others, but it doesn't matter. It's probably why it wasn't fitting in the nut properly. Well, it looks like it's fitting in the nut, it's not going to fall out. Like I got them backwards the other way around, like I swapped the D with the G and put it in the G spot, because if I put it in the say where the D went, it'd be too short to go to the G to correct it. Now I believe it was this one I broke the screw on. No, it was the B string, which has very little tension on it anyway, so it's not going to twist it round. Yes, I made a mistake with that machine head, but we all do. So the wiring shouldn't take that much to do. Now they do say before final assembly, if you want the thing to buzz, then don't put any copper shielding on the inside of, say, the pickup holes or the inside of the control cavity. I've got some on the way, and I can always pull the strings off and the pickups out to do that. But what I might do now is I might eyeball the height of these pickups, so they're roughly where they should be, which is pretty much almost in line with the top of the bridge anyway, so they don't have to be super far out or super close, but now I can finalise their placement and get both roughly the same height. And that should be him. That one's albeit a bit crooked. Bring him straight. There we go. Yeah, I'm satisfied with that. I was also looking at the action too. It's not too bad. Yeah, could probably go down slightly lower, because there is quite a fair big gap at this end, at least 5mm, so I can bring it down a bit. But overall the action isn't too bad. Hello Sweep. The action isn't all that bad, so it doesn't require that much adjustment. It depends on your playing style too, of course. Oh well, that's annoying. The wire from the bridge didn't stay there. So I'm going to have to lift the bridge back off, not all the way. Release some tension on the strings just so I can slip the wire back in the hole and tighten it down again. I'm just checking for continuity. I'm using the string here and the wire I've just put back in. We have continuity, so I know it's earthed. Now, of course, we won't be able to hear anything unless we do the electronics. So they say to take a piece of cardboard and put holes in it so you can place your pots in it to solder them. But of course, to solder to these you need a blob of solder on the back and these earth leads on at least the volume controls anyway, not so much the tone control. Needs to be attached to the body. So I'm going to file off all the points I need on all these pots, and then we're going to start soldering. So there's my 2 volume pots, and that is the tone control. I'm laying them out in order, you know, volume, volume, tone, output socket. Unbelievably easy to solder to. Okay, that one just needs got solder on the back. Okay, so that's 2 volume pots wide. I need to join them together here to here and to there. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's all the wiring done. Just got to transfer it into the base and wire up the pickups to each volume control and the output socket. And pretty much done. So that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, time for the output socket, but now I know why there was 4 screws for the back, because 2 of them go in here, obviously. So I need to first drill my holes for the socket, which is not exactly level. I don't think I'll be able to bend that. Yeah, alright. Okay, now I can wire the socket in. Some of the heads on these screws are a bit, how you doing? Probably not the best type of screw that I've seen so far. That doesn't have to be overly tight, just as long as it's, you know, in there. Now to check to see if a cord plugs in and out of it. Yep. Well, whilst it's plugged in, I'll flip it over and see, connect to an amplifier. I can hear it's fairly buzzy. Okay. Something not right here. Okay, well I found the issue. Those black wires don't actually connect to anything. Sounds weird, doesn't it? Turn that down. Yeah, I'm going to have to put in a copper shielding in there. I found most of that buzz was actually the soldering iron. As soon as I turned it off, it went almost away. So that's the backing plate on. The only thing left to do, I've already pre-drilled the holes in the headstock to put this strut cover plate on when I've actually done a proper setup on this. I'm only going to tune it up and, you know, see how it sounds in its present form and then worry about action and that later. So I've got 2 of these strap mounts plus 2 felt pads and 2 longish screws. So, excuse me, best idea would be to guess the center somewhere here and put one in there, and somewhere near the top here. And the unit's almost complete. If someone can tell me what those black wires on the humbucker pickups are for in the comments below, that'd be great, because they weren't supposed to be wired to earth, that's for sure. I might use the drill for this. This was a fun kit to build. I must admit, I'm quite happy with and pleased with the results, albeit my finish could have been a lot better than it is, but okay, so I'll get this one going. I tell you, it's handy having an electric drill, just saying. And okay. Okay, so I suppose I should put it on a tuner before I go any further. Okay, so the tuner won't see the low B properly. Sounds alright. Whoops. Let's try that again. That sounds alright. I've forgotten how to play a 5-string. It's a little bit of a ringing there in the string. That means the truss rod needs to be tightened slightly more. Yeah, anyway, sounds alright apart from that buzz, but if I move around, buzz goes away, sort of like disappears there altogether. So it's picking up noise probably from the amplifier. Yeah, so that's the EX-5 bass kit. It's not properly set up as in the action and the intonation. That has to be done separately. That's just adjusting these in and out until you get the right pitches. But the action does need to be lowered a bit because it's a bit too high up here at the 12th fret. Needs to be more down there. But that's easy enough to do. I'll do that later. I'm just going to let this properly dry overnight because it's still, well, it's dry now, but it needs 24 hours at least before it becomes totally playable. So anyway, I'm the Astro 30. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to rate, like and comment below, and you can always follow me on Facebook and Twitter. The links are in the description as usual. Anyway, this is the Astro 30 saying this. Anyway, this is the Astro 30 saying happy basing.